stand?
Well, I got a job. They tried to hire me for 35 cents an hour, and I refused, and I got 50 cents an hour. And I was by myself on a Saturday at the custard stand, and it got a little more business from over at Kennedy Veterans Hospital, and a lot of black people, and they were around at the black window and had the white window in front. And on that particular day, what I would do, I would alternate. I would wait on a black customer, then a white customer, then back to the black window. Well, there's this one guy that didn't like that, and he started giving me a bunch of trouble. And he said, "You ought to be waiting on us first."
Coming to you from the MAB Podcast Network, this is On The Brink with Michael Allen Brown. Today is a very special episode of On The Brink, and a first for me. For the first time, I'm welcoming a guest to sit down with me and to share his story. But this just isn't any guest. In a few days, Joe Hall will celebrate his 88th birthday. Joe is my brother-in-law, but those words don't begin to describe the place he has occupied in my life. He knew me before I was old enough to remember knowing him. He married my sister and became part of our family. But over the course of my lifetime, he also became a role model, an influence, and one of the men I have most respected. His life has taken him from delivering newspapers as a young boy to working behind the counter of a little Memphis custard stand. From the loading dock of a major transportation company to the president's office, and onto golf courses alongside some names you may very well recognize. Along the way, he has accumulated nearly 9 decades of memories and far more stories than we could possibly tell in a single episode. So today, we're not going to try. We're simply going to sit down together and talk. Joe, welcome to On The Brink, and happy 88th birthday.
Thank you.
Joe, you've known me virtually my entire life. In fact, one of my earliest memories of you goes back to when I was about 4 years old. And you were dating my sister, and apparently there was a certain 4-year-old boy who had this habit of interrupting your courting visits. I seem to remember something involving my blue jeans and a pair of suspenders. What exactly did you do to me during that time?
Your sister and I were trying to get a little smooching in the living room, and there you were. I think your mother sent you in there to interrupt. So what I did was take your suspenders off the top of your pants and connect them to the bottom of your legs, of the leg of the pants, and it made you walk on your tiptoe. And you went tiptoeing right on out, so it worked.
Was that just a prank, or were you really actually trying to get rid of me?
Both.
Well, fortunately, our relationship does seem to have improved considerably since then. As a young man, you had a very, I guess maybe a teenager's job as a newspaper boy. You delivered the morning newspaper there in Memphis. And there was one particular pre-dawn delivery to a local bakery, I think it was. when you crossed paths with a rather unusually dressed young man carrying a guitar. Tell us about that morning.
Well, that was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I had finished the paper out and all, and several of us went to Ray's Donut Shop on McLemore. And when I walked in, I noticed this guy with a guitar kind of strung over his back. And strange looking guy, had on a lot of fancy looking clothes. One of them I remember most, it looked like his shirt or top was a woman's house coat. It had fringe on it and all, and I got a good look at him. He had long hair and all, and he left, and I asked Mr. Ray, I said, "Who was that?" He said, "Oh, that's Dixie Locke's latest boyfriend." And I said, "Well, he sure looks strange." He said, "He's going to be a singer," Mr. Ray said. And I said, "Well, that's good." So that was the first time, and the first time I ever saw Elvis Presley in person.
That is an incredible story. At that moment, did the name Elvis Presley mean anything to you? Had you ever heard about him or ever come across his name?
I hadn't even heard that Dixie was dating him. Or her name was Willadina Locke, and somebody nicknamed her Dixie after Dixie Auto Parts, which was on 3rd Street there. And you could see it, Dixie Auto Parts, and they thought Willadina was kind of a mouthful, so they nicknamed her Dixie.
How about that? When did you eventually realize that this young man that you passed that morning was becoming famous?
Well, I saw him around Dixie's house. So at 244 Lucy, she lived, and saw him a few times there. And then he appeared at the Mid-South Fair, and he stole the show. He and Tina Turner, Georgia May Bullock, they stole the show.
Wow, that's incredible. Did you ever, from that time on, there was never a time that you ever crossed paths with him again?
Yeah, I saw him a few times, different places. Once we went down, a friend of mine named George Dickey, we went down and crawled over the wall at Elvis's place, and thought we were going to get arrested, but somebody said, "Come on up," so we stood around and watched the festivities, and it was a lot of picking and singing and all that, so that was pretty neat to see a part of that.
That's kind of ironic because I was, when I lived in South Haven and had a bunch of my classmates and her neighborhood friends, we used to take bicycle treks all over the place. And I remember one time we rode up to Graceland in Whitehaven, and his uncle was running the guard stand there. And you'd always know when Elvis was home because the gates would be closed. But if they were locked, or if they were open, you knew that he was out of town. And so we asked his uncle, said, "You think it might be possible we could ride up our bikes up around the mansion?" And he said, "Oh, sure, go ahead." He said, "Just don't tell Elvis that I let you do it." So we got to do that. You crawled over the wall, and I rode the driveway. At about 16 years old, you were working in a little custard stand across from Kennedy Veterans Hospital in Memphis. And this was during a deeply segregated time in the South, and particularly in Memphis. And the stand had, from what I understand, separate serving windows for black and white customers.
Water fountain.
Tell us about that.
Well, let me give you a little background. I grew up in Old South Memphis on Simpson Street, and the black people lived 6 houses down on Simpson. So over a period of the 14 years I lived there, I got to know all of them as they walked past the house to go to Santee We Own a Store. And then right over the back fence on Lucy Street, black families live, so I got to know a lot of them. And in the summer, we play softball, baseball. In the winter, football. We played up behind Macklemore Presbyterian Church in the Scout Field, it was called. So I had a lot of black friends. I was proud of it.
Okay, so what led up to this event at the custard stand?
Well, I got a job. They tried to hire me for 35 cents an hour, and I refused, and I got 50 cents an hour. And I was by myself on a Saturday at the custard stand, and it got a little more business from over at Kennedy Veterans Hospital. And a lot of black people, and they were around at the black window and had the white window in front. And on that particular day, what I would do, I would alternate. I would wait on a black customer, then a white customer, then back to the black window. Well, there's this one guy that didn't like that, and he started giving me a bunch of trouble. And he said, "You ought to be waiting on us first." And I said, "Not going to be that way." And anyway, he said, "I'll have your job. I'll call the guy." And I said, "Do what you want." And I went in the back. I had seen a little baseball bat, a little miniature baseball bat back there that I guess the owner had from somewhere. So I went outside. I said, "Excuse me, everybody." I went outside. I knocked the colored only sign down. And I had my trusty knife in my pocket, and I removed the colored only off the water fountains. And I took them and threw them in the trash can, and I came back in and I said, "Okay." And I took a display and set it in front of the colored only window, so if someone walked to that window, they'd see just cardboard. So that closed that window. And then I said, "Everybody move over," and I'm waiting on everybody just one window. Well, the white guy started giving me more trouble. I said, "If you don't like it, go somewhere else." You know, for 15 years old, I wasn't too nice to him, I'll tell you that. And I wasn't bashful about telling him to go somewhere else. And he did call his friend that owned the place, and he came down there and he said, "You got to put the signs back." I said, "No, sir, I'm not putting them back." And I said, "Tell you what, make it easy for you, I quit." He said, "Oh, no, I don't," because he knew I was a good worker. Well, he had to help me. We had so many customers at the window by then. And the next day, as the word went around that I had desegregated the frozen custard place, man, we had 50 people out there at one time in the park, covering the parking lot, and I had to call him and tell him that somebody needs to help. So he, his wife, and another worker, we had 4 people working there where I had done it by myself. So, but I never put the signs back up. It stayed desegregated, and I was proud of it.
Wow, the day that Memphis became desegregated, that's incredible.
That was in May of '54, I think it was.
May of '54. Joe, you were only 15 years old at that time.
I would have been 16 in July.
Yeah. Where did that sense of fairness come from in your mind?
I guess from my dad. I saw all the black people he worked with over at Sims Bag Company and how friendly he was with them. And I felt the same way about the people that walked up and down in front of my house and lived over the back fence for all those years. I think it was about 8 or 9 years. So I got to be friends with them, and that has stayed with me forever.
Wow, that's incredible. Did you understand, or did you have any concept at the time what the consequences might be when you took those signs down?
Oh, I thought I might get fired, but I didn't care. I had a paper route where I got up at 3:45 every morning and delivered newspapers. So I was a busy guy even at that age. I had a lot of things going on.
Did the fact that some of those customers were black veterans coming from across the street at the hospital have any particular significance to you?
Oh yeah, there's no way I was going to make them second-class citizens and have them go to the side window. I just decided to fix it, especially after the loudmouth white guy harassed me and made derogatory remarks about black people. They ought not even be here, he said. You know, I think he was the one that shouldn't have been there.
Exactly. Well, you know, you eventually entered commercial transportation business as a dock worker.
Yeah, Roadway Express.
Roadway Express down off of Crump, wasn't it?
857 East Georgia.
Yeah, okay, that was down there close. I remember my dad's shop used to be down in that neighborhood. Years later, you would reach the pinnacle of your career. Where was that at now?
I had been transferred all over the country. I went from Memphis to Chattanooga, Atlanta, New Haven, Connecticut, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Washington, D.C. I got kind of tired of all the transferring, and I'd been offered. A good friend of mine went to work in California, and they offered me a real good job, and so we up and moved to California.
Yeah.
And
Now, was that with Transcon?
no, I had left. That was with PIE, Pacific Intermountain Express. I went to Transcon a little later, but became president of Transcon.
Wow.
But I always had a sense of fairness. I guess we were one of the first companies to hire black sales representatives, black terminal managers. I had a lot of people that made pretty negative remarks about me, who I thought the most of, but I said, listen to me and don't forget it. I put the best qualified person for the job. He gets it, regardless of whether he's black or white or whatever. And that's the way it's going to be. Later in my career, when I was went to Texas with Central Freight Lines, became president there, I promoted Tommy Bowman, a black fellow from Baylor University. I made him vice president of the over-the-road operation. Why? He was the best qualified guy for the job.
Wow, that's great. You know, that's an extraordinary journey that you took, and you mentioned the fact that you heard some people that had negative comments, but I want you to know that coming up in the years that I've come up, and you know, I probably more associated you at that particular time with being with Roadway, but I would occasionally run into people that were
Toledo,
that had worked
Toledo, Ohio,
had
right?
worked for Roadway, exactly, and you should hear some of the comments they made. They said, you know, he's always fair. He'll give you a fair shake, no matter who you were. Didn't matter what your station was. You know, Joe Hall was going to treat you fairly. So I think that's a great accolade for sure, without a doubt. And I know that you made a lot of positive impressions on the lives of a lot of people.
Yeah, they were Teamster employees, but I got along with the Teamster employees and the Teamsters Union, just like I did everybody else, because I treated them with dignity and respect, the same as I was expecting them to treat me. So it went pretty smooth for me.
Yeah. Well, what did working on a truck dock teach you about leadership at that time in your life?
Well, mainly I learned how you didn't want to be a supervisor. There was a couple of them, all they were loud mouths that screamed and yelled and wanted to holler at everybody. And they didn't get the best out of the people by doing that. And when I became a dock foreman there in Memphis. By the way, I hired several of my old black buddies from Lucy Street. They came over and worked, and one of them retired as a road driver after 45 years.
Wow.
At Roadway. But those I just learned you attract more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And these guys that yelled and screamed and didn't work out.
Yeah.
And I would handle it face to face, up close, where nobody could hear if there was a problem. And it always worked for me. In fact, the president of the company one time told me when he was transferring me from Laurel, Maryland, that was the Baltimore Washington terminal, to Detroit. He said, "Okay, son, go to Detroit with that unorthodox style of management of yours and fix it like you did this one." Well, Laurel, Maryland had been a loser and we made it a winner, but unorthodox style of management, I said, I always thought you had the unorthodox style of management. He said, "Don't get smart, boy." He was an old North Carolina guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, as you moved into management, did you ever consciously remember what it felt like to be that person working on that dock way back then, or did you always keep that in the back of your mind?
I always did.
Yeah.
I knew what it took. I knew what you had to do. I knew when it was colder than, especially when I was in Detroit, when it was that cold up there, those guys, they did their job. And maybe I gave them an extra 15 minutes warming period, but it paid off.
Yeah. They felt like they were being treated fairly,
Yeah.
and that's what counts. What qualities do you think allowed you to continue in your advancing? I mean, you had to. I mean, you were going up the ladder.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I always, and I still say this to my grandsons and all. You need to have good people skills. You need to be able to deal with everybody from a mechanic in the shop, a dock worker, to a vice president in the home office, and everybody in between. And I used the people skills I had to do that. But one of the key ingredients is common sense, which very few people have any common sense anymore. And I always prided myself with having lots of it, and it worked for me. And you got to have some leadership ability, and if you get those three ingredients going for you, people skills, common sense, and leadership ability, you can be successful.
that's a great point to make. I mean, being the head, being the top, being the president, CEO of a company, of a major transportation company, is no small accomplishment. What did you find is the greatest challenge of leading a major company like that?
Getting them to believe I was for real. For example, I would show up I was president of the company, but I would show up on the dock at 2:00 in the morning with coffee and donuts and have a more or less a safety meeting about working without mashing your hands or fingers, or a claim prevention, proper loading techniques, don't tear up the freight, don't cost us money, and it all worked. They were shocked to see me out there at 2:00 in the morning. I'll tell you that.
I bet. I will get to this in a little bit, but I think I remembered seeing you out there one of those early mornings myself at one time. What accomplishment from your career really makes you the proudest that you can reflect back on?
Bringing the people together in Laurel, Maryland was a big accomplishment. Our black employees and white employees were at odds. In fact, there had been fights in the break room. One guy got hit with a walkie-talkie, and it was really a tough situation. And I told top management from Akron, I said, I know how to fix this, and I can. I said, but I need $15,000. And they said, okay, you got it. I said, all right. So what I did was I rented Glen Echo Amusement Park for one Saturday morning, and told everybody to be there. I told them, bring your neighbors, bring your friends, bring your relatives, because we got the whole thing, and we had all kinds of goodies to eat: hamburgers, hot dogs, fried chicken, just everything you'd have at a picnic. And it went over good. The picnic part went over good, but what really went over well was I had enough money. I said, we're going to have sack races, even had a football throw to see who could throw a ball the furthest, or a kick, and I awarded prizes. They couldn't believe it. I said $500 for the first prize.
Wow.
On the sack race. And boy, everybody was excited. But what they didn't realize, that there's going to be one white leg and one black leg in that sack. And they didn't seem to like it at first, but the first place winner, when he got to $500, they thought it was great. And all of that, the football, kick, pass, whatever, however I had it set up, on Monday morning in the break room, instead of having all the black employees on one side and whites on the other side hurling accusations at each other, they were all together giving each other high fives. You should have seen me when I did this. We won the sack race. And that brought Laurel, Maryland together as slick as anything I ever did, and it became very profitable.
Wow.
And as a result, I got promoted to Detroit, which wasn't too good.
That is something to be proud of, I'll guarantee you.
Yeah.
Well, then you also gave a young fellow right out of high school his first summer job on a roadway dock in Toledo, Ohio. I happened to be that young fellow. Do you remember about sending me up there?
Oh, yeah, sure do. I remember you lived with us while you were working there, and everybody, you did a good job. Everybody, even the shop steward told me, said, your brother-in-law is a good kid, good man, hard worker, and I appreciated that.
That's good. I appreciate having that opportunity. I made more money in that one summer than I made my whole life. I think it was $8.40 an hour.
Well, when I started, Michael, and it was $2.47 an hour. And excuse me, I think that's my 10-pound beast barking back in the background.
Well, that's how much was it now an hour that you said?
It was $2.47 an hour when I worked on the dock, and that was in 1957.
Wow. Well, yeah, I know that for me it was, you were able to, I think you told the terminal manager, said, give him all the hours you can give him.
Well, heck, we needed all the people we could get back then. It was a break bulk terminal. That's a consolidation and distribution. So we had all the work you could possibly want. So we needed a lot of people.
I remember, I think it was 8 hours on, 8 hours off, 8 hours
Just
on.
about, yeah.
My sister.
You were a casual. You didn't make the regular seniority list, but you were what we called a casual employee.
Yeah.
And you could work 16 hours in one day as long as you had 8 hours off.
Right. Yeah, I remember my sister Gloria. She blacked out the windows in my room, and
so you could sleep.
I didn't know 8 hours on, 8 hours off, 8 hours on, 8 hours off. I didn't know I didn't know what day of the week it was or what week it was. It was just that kind of an arrangement. But I do remember one time I didn't think I was going to be called in, and they called me in, and I had stayed up. I think all that whole 8 hour.
That makes it tough.
Yeah, it was tough, but I went in and I stuck with it and did it.
Let me tell you what happened to me one time. I was still living at home. I worked 8 hours at Roadway, In fact, I was a morning shift. I went in early, and they sent me out to Firestone plant as a helper with another driver, with a driver. And when I got home, my mother said, Gordon's Transport's called. They want you to come to work. So I called them. They said, can you be here by 5? And I said, yes. So I went at 5, and I worked till about 1 in the morning. And when I got home and walked in the door, my mother said, Campbell 66 has been calling. So I called them and said, can you come in? And I said, yeah. So I went right back. I worked 24 hours in a row.
Oh, my.
At that, maybe we was making $3 an hour then, but at that age, I didn't even get tired. I just kept at it and finally came home, slept 24 hours.
You know, I can't remember everything that happened up there in Toledo, but you may have some stories about me, and maybe I should proceed at my own risk. I think at that time I had, coming out of high school, I'd already surrendered to be a preacher. And there was one 4th of July picnic that we had there at your house. And I was green as a gourd. I was almost as green as that drink you gave me.
Well, I gave you greenies, and it was lime juice mixed with vodka, and you got pretty drunk. In fact, you fell down on the concrete next to the pool, and you said, I think I'm drunk. I said, I think you are too. I said, as long as you're going to be a preacher, you need to learn a little bit about sinning.
You sure did.
So you did, and you told your mother on me.
I'm telling you what, man. I figured, everything, she had already found out everything else about me that I'd ever done anyway, so I figured I'd just save her the trouble of looking.
I know.
So I went ahead and told her. Well, that's an interesting...
it was good days.
Interesting story. A lot of good memories. Taught me a lot of responsibility, and it was a good lesson. Very good lesson. We couldn't possibly talk about your life without talking about golf. How did your lifelong love affair with the game begin? How did it start?
Well, I didn't start playing until I was 35 years old, and I was in California. And it seemed that every terminal that I was over had an annual golf tournament where customers were invited. And I was out driving a beer wagon, giving beer to each foursome, and everybody said, you look like a good athlete, you ought to try golf. So I did. And it became, I love the game. It's something you can do all your life, and I have played it up till 85 years old when, for health reasons, I had to stop. But it was something I enjoyed. I played golf with numerous, like the head of Hitachi International came from Tokyo, Mr. Yashida, and he wanted to play Riviera Country Club, which we had a membership, and I took him to Riviera. And my head of the board of directors was a member of LA Country Club, and we played LA Country Club North, which is one of the best courses in the country. And then I took him to Bel Air, where our treasurer had a membership, and he got to see a lot of movie stars. So we had a great time on the golf course. After I took Mr. Yashida with Hitachi to all those places, about a week later there was a knock at the door of the office, and these workers came back there and they tried to give me about $15,000 worth of Hitachi radio. They had the whole thing, the speakers on the walls, and I had to call the chairman of the board to make sure he thought it was okay, and he said, yeah, don't insult them, take it, and don't leave it when you leave, and I did.
Wow. You also had an affiliation with the Danny Thomas Golf Classic.
Yeah,
And as a matter of fact, I think
your 3 years.
your company actually sponsored, was
Yeah.
one of the sponsors of that, wasn't it?
Yep, I played with Payne Stewart 2 years in a row.
2 years in a row with Payne.
I think you were there.
You know what? You let me walk around the course with you, and that was really a real privilege to be standing beside you two. I would have loved to have heard all the conversation between you two, but it was just enough for me as a young boy to be there to experience what I experienced.
Well, Payne and I hit it off real well, and we just had a great time. And the next year, I had entered it, and I went to the dinner prior to the tournament. And a guy named Jack Roberts, who ran it, came up to me and said, "Payne Stewart asked for you to be in his foursome this year." And I said, "Well, that's great. We had a good time." So ended up with Payne Stewart for the second year.
That's incredible. It's kind of ironic that you're here in Springfield, Missouri now, and this is where Payne got his start. You're a rock's throw
Hickory Hill Country Club.
Just a rock's throw away from where we are right now. Wow.
And there's a course named for him and his father up north, about 5 miles north of here.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of golfers that are listening to On the Brink, so they'll appreciate this story for sure. Other celebrities you encountered all throughout your career, and most of them were on country clubs.
Country clubs. I saw movie stars galore at.
Tell that story about George C. Scott.
Well, we had a foursome at Bel Air Country Club. And I didn't realize it, but right behind us was George C. Scott, and I think Jim Garner, and forgot the other two. But we were on the 9th tee, and there was a little bit of a delay. And I'm looking back up the fairway, and I hear a ball come through the trees. You hear it hit the trees, and it landed, and I saw where it went. And this guy, here he comes, tromping down the fairway and over into the tree area. He had on shorts and suspenders with shorts. and his old beat up hat, and he came over there, and then I realized it was George Scott, General Patton. He came over there, he said, "You see a ball come over here anywhere?" And I said, "Yes, sir, General, it's right over there." He said, "Oh, you saw that movie too?" And I said, "I sure did. It was magnificent." He said, "It was better than magnificent." What a character.
That's something.
Yeah, I found it. So I took him to where the ball was. He was a pretty good golfer, not bad at all. He just had a bad shot on that hole.
Yeah. Of all those famous people that you've met through golf, who surprised you the most?
Well, James Garner, really. We were sitting in the card room at Bel Air Country Club, and our treasurer knew him. But I wasn't, when you're around people, you don't ask for autographs and you don't want pictures. You just treat them like everyday people, and that's the way they treat you. So I was listening to James Garner, and that some guy asked him and said, "Jim, tell me, how'd you get in the movie business?" This won't take long, but I'll tell you. He said, "Well, I was laying carpet," and he gave the name of the company, and he said, "We were over here in Bel Air, and it was hotter than the blazes. They had turned off the air conditioner in the house where we were putting the carpet in, so I had on just Bermuda shorts, my socks and work boots, and I had my shirt off." He said, "I was built pretty good." And he said, "I saw this guy come in and look at me a few times, and I wondered what that was up." And said, finally, about the time we were quitting, he came over and gave me a card, and he said, "Call me." He said, "I want to maybe do some business with you." And you know what? I can't, for the life of me, remember the name of the guy. He was somebody you'd recognize in the movie business. So he said, I called him, and he said, a couple of days later, they called me and wanted me to come in, and I did. And he said, I didn't do anything but put on different clothes. I put on an Army uniform, a naval uniform, a police uniform, a cowboy uniform, put on all kinds of stuff, and they posed different things. He said, I didn't hear from him for about a month. And the phone rang one day, and they wanted me to come back in. I went back in. They put on a black suit, a black coat with a string bow tie, and I became a star of a Western. Was he Maverick?
Maverick.
Yeah, he said I became a star of the TV series Maverick. And he said, and that's how I got started. He said, in between now, they called me for little bit parts. In one movie, I was a wounded naval guy on a boat, and they got a full shot of me sitting on a table being different things like that, but no speaking roles. But when Maverick came along, said that made me the man that I am.
I'm telling you, that's great. Well, that's a lot of experiences out there in California. But you actually, you and Gloria came back to Memphis 2013, I think it was, you said.
Yeah, we had retired, and I was getting old, and came back to Memphis,
well, it was
our hometown.
It was a retirement that really wasn't a retirement, because after retiring and returning home to Memphis, golf remained an important part of your life. And you organized a real, just a fantastic seniors golf group.
Well, there was no seniors league in Memphis, so I went about setting one up. It's still in existence today. They have about 150 players on Wednesday on 2 different courses, 120 on Monday at one course. There's a group in northern Mississippi broke off from our group, and it has been quite a ride. It's been just a great thing for the seniors, and for that I got elected to the Memphis Sports Hall of Fame.
Wow, what an honor.
Which that was an honor.
You know, was the fellowship with all of those guys as important as the golf?
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah.
I've heard you talk so many times about.
Yeah, I know so many people by first name that people can't believe. I remember all of them. There was 120 usually on a Wednesday, and I was sitting at the check-in desk. I knew every one of them's first name and last name.
You know, you've always been someone who never seems to meet a stranger. I mean, everywhere you go, it doesn't matter if it's Perkins or wherever, you walk in and all of a sudden the whole place becomes your stage, your audience. And it's funny because my wife accuses me of being you. She said a lot of times I'm doing the same thing.
Well, that might be hard.
Yeah, well, it may be. I probably won't live up to that for sure. 88 years of wisdom. You know,
I won't be 88 for several more days now.
Yeah, you got a few more days to go.
26.
You can hang on to 87, but you've lived through nearly 9 decades of extraordinary change. What change in this world has really amazed you the most?
Well, you're talking about political or just any kind of change?
Well, take your pick.
I started following politics a long time ago, and I was very happy when I was most upset with Iran taking the hostages. And the day that Ronald Reagan was elected, they released them. So that was a big moment for me. And later I met Ronald Reagan, was on a 5-hour flight from L.A. to Washington, D.C. It just so happened there was nobody in first class except me and Ronald Reagan and a reporter from the Detroit Free Press named Gary Sweet, which I stayed friends with him a long time, so they did interviews with me and all. We had just a great time, and I got his autograph, and I wasn't ashamed to ask for his autograph.
Yeah.
He'd been the governor of California, and so now he's going to run for president, and he made it, and I have his autograph. And It was, I learned a lot on that flight from LA to Washington.
There was, there was a time that in 1980, I was just getting ready to enter seminary in Memphis. My sister, bless her heart, that's gone on to be with the Lord now, Bridget, she and I went to a Friends of the Library book sale there in Memphis one Saturday morning, and I came across this little book that, long story, and I'm not going to elaborate on it, but anyway, out of this little book that I purchased like for 40 cents, there was this photograph of the United States Capitol, and I took that picture, and I remember talking to you about it, and trying to get your advice. You said, you know what, you ought to do something with that. And I took your advice on it.
It was worth something, I could tell.
Yeah, I took your advice on that, so I launched a campaign to see if I could have it enlarged from what it was, very small, to a presentable size to where it could be presented to different people. And wouldn't you know it, there were 600 prints made of that, and I presented the first one to Ronald Reagan.
And he answered you, right?
He answered me. I've got all the documentation, and the 1866 United States Capitol, and
that's a heck of a file you got on
that. That picture has gone all the way around the world. I made a personal presentation to Prime Minister Ariel Sharon in Israel, in Jerusalem,
knew you did.
And but apart that stimulus that you gave me, that advice, because I don't know if you even realized it or not, but I mean, I kind of idolized you. I looked up to you. All I could see was a guy that had made such a huge success of his life and a good life that I wanted to emulate that.
Well,
and it meant a very, very, very much to me. You've met people from all different walks of life, names around the world, people whose names will never appear in a history book. What have you learned about people?
Everybody wants to be treated with dignity, and as long as you do that, in other words, treat them like you want to be treated, you can be very successful and you can get along with them. I don't think I've ever had a problem with anybody in my business career. I'll tell you one story. I did have a problem when I first went to California. I was trying to get into an account, or we were trying to get into an account called Honda Air Conditioning. And the guy that ran it was a Japanese guy, Manta Watanabe, who later became a dear friend. But they said he hated the company and he didn't want to do business with us. So I said, I'll take the account. Now, I was the district manager at the time of California and Arizona and Nevada. But I went over to Honda Air Conditioning, walked in. Little Japanese lady comes up and says, could I help you? And I said, gave him a card. And she looked at it and she said, shook her head and said, I don't think he wants to see you. I said, well, take it back there and show him. And so she went down the hall, she gave him the card. He started yelling and carrying on like Manta could do. And she came back and there was my card. It had been torn, about three, it was in pieces. And she said, no see, no see.
No
so
kidding.
I took those pieces, and she said, I can throw them in the can. I said, no, I want them. I took those pieces and went back to the office and laid them down like a jigsaw puzzle and put them back into place and put Scotch tape on it. But now I had a card that was about twice as big as the other one, Scotch tape on it. So I waited about 2 weeks, and I went back over, and she came up to me. She said, no. I said, give him my card and tell him, and she looked at the card, and she went, She went back there and Monta, I heard him laughing out loud, and he stuck his head out the door and said, "Come on back." And I went back. We became good friends, and we did a big business with them after that. All because of a crazy stunt, a card that didn't look like a card any longer. But he was an avid golfer, and we played golf together. And after I was gone, Monta died on the golf course over in Buena Park, California.
Wow.
They called me. I forgot where I was. I was at work that Saturday morning. They called me immediately and said Monta passed away. And I thought, well, he went like he would want to go.
Yeah, yeah.
I said I would hate to see him in some nursing home unable to do anything, but he was on the golf course.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, that speaks volumes about tenacity, never giving up, even if it was a little unconventional, going back and taping together a card that somebody had torn up.
I said that on the golf course, never give up, the next one might go in.
That's it, exactly. Well, if you, when your children, grandchildren, and generations to come who come after you someday listen to this conversation, what would you like for them to know? What do you hope they remember about Joe Hall?
That I was fair to everyone, regardless of race, creed, or color. It made no difference. The best person the best qualified person for the job got it, where I was concerned.
Well, Joe, before we finish, there's something I want to say, not just as the host of On The Brink, but as that little 4-year-old boy whose suspenders you used to attach to the bottom of his blue jeans. I've had the privilege of watching your life for as long as I can remember. And I've watched the way you treated people, whether they worked on the dock or sat in an executive office. I've seen your generosity. I've seen the way that you were there for my parents, mom and dad, during times when they needed help. Perhaps I didn't always say anything, and perhaps I didn't even understand fully the significance of those things when I was younger. But I was watching, Joe.
I'm glad you were.
I was watching all along. And somewhere along the way, the man who once tormented a little 4-year-old boy became one of the men that boy would grow up wanting to be like. So while I have this opportunity, I want to say something that perhaps we sometimes wait far too long to say. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for what you've meant to my family. And thank you for what you've meant to me. Happy 88th birthday. I love you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. And you know I love you since you were 4 years old.
That's it. Well, we want to do something really special here. I don't know if you saw this or not.
I just took a glance. I didn't know it was 88.
Yeah. But we want to sing happy birthday to you here.
I'm for that.
Where is that other person? I don't know if she's around or not.
Here's my main squeeze. She's here.
Okay, here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joe. Happy birthday to you. All right.
Don't forget, and many more.
And many more. It's a wrap.
I don't know how many more I can have, but
That's
I'll
number
take
88. Go for 12 more. 12 more.
Thank you for listening in today for On The Brink in this very special episode. God bless you, and we'll catch you next time.